But there's one thing, and I'm going to reveal it now, was one thing that could undermine this whole thing, and that's this statement right here that Trump has put out. So today we're having a look at the big recent trip that's been happening as far as tariffs are concerned, the unfolding of this. And I'm also going to reveal at the end what is the biggest threat to the US economy right now as far as Trump is showing and revealing. And this is the weakness, this is the chink here in terms of this whole economic policy that's happening in America right now. But as you might know, he got on that plane again and traveled over to Japan to start with. And there was a lot that was going on. But before we get into that, I think there's an overview that we need to look at, because there's a common thread that has been negotiated on all of these deals that the United States has been doing as far as the tariffs are concerned. Take a look at what Percent says in this clip here.
The president has been laser focused since the day he came in office in terms of rare earths. He issued an executive order right out of the blocks. He recognized that this is a strategic vulnerability for the U.S. The Chinese control about 70% of the mining, but more importantly, they control about 90% of the processing and refining. So since January, President Trump, this administration have been working to stand up facilities where we can refine and process rare earths. I think it is something that we inherited. This was a mess that's 20 years in the making, and President Trump is determined to solve this, because we have to take control of our supply chains. And we're going to be taking control of our supply chains in rare earths, in semiconductors, in medicines, in steel, in shipbuilding. Part of the America First agenda that President Trump is pushing is for us to be able to control our own destiny and not have any choke points in our supply chains like he inherited.
I think that's the key to remember here. It is the rare earths that they want. The vulnerability is that China's been controlling that market and is ahead of the United States. So you notice that he did that deal with Australia, wanting to secure more rare earths in the negotiations between Ukraine and Russia and ending the conflict. They're wanting to secure rare earths. Greenland, the interest in that when he first came into office, rare earths. This keeps coming up. The United States wants rare earths, in case you're missing it. And I think that this message that he sent out just a couple of weeks that crashed the markets, not only in the stock market, but also in the crypto space, was the fact that China has been rumored to be approaching nations and holding them to ransom in terms of, hey, if the rare earths were produced in China, you have to get our permission to on-sell it to other nations. That's really ultimate control there. So in other words, if they produce a phone that has rare earths and Australians buy it, if Australians want to on-sell it elsewhere, they'd have to get China's permission to do so. And that's what America has been concerned about and vulnerable. So what I'm showing you here is what's the motivation on how they're actually negotiating right now. Now, he went off to Japan, and that was really an interesting sort of meeting that came out of that. He was very complimentary of the Japanese. And you've got to remember, too, that the Japanese are in a bit of a vulnerable state because they're not far from, of course, the one who has interests in Taiwan. Why is Taiwan so interesting? Because they're the biggest producer of microchips. And, of course, that is on the shores of where China has shown its interest. So you've got Japan with a long history of tension between the Japanese and the Chinese. Take a look at this video as Trump arrives in China.
Before we get to that one, just something else. Congo, the war over there was also the rare earth deal. India and Pakistan also had the rare earth deals. And when Trump was doing his press conference, I think it was the one with Albanese, he was saying that China controls 98% of the world's manufacturing, like the refining of rare earth. So absolutely, this is a very, very important issue for America. So let's get to Japan now.
So here we see the formal signing. They've got on very, very well. And Trump has been very, very complimentary, which you'll hear about in just a moment, of her. This is Japan's first female president. And yeah, what a way to kick it off, with Trump coming over to see her and them negotiating from there. Very smart lady too. They actually presented Trump with golf accessories, a golf bag, signed by one of their famous professional golfers and that sort of stuff. So they kicked it off well.
There's actually more to the golf bag story than what a lot of people know. The the late former president of Japan who got assassinated, him and Trump, every single time they either would visit each other, they'd spend hours on the golf course because they're both fanatical golfers. So that's just something else that it's the level of politeness that the Japanese take things is just to a whole nother level. So that's one of the reasons why Japan is actually one of the countries that I'm very, very keen to look at doing investments in. So I love Japan. I love Japanese people, but yeah, they're a tricky one because on the surface they're so polite, but you got to remember they are savage dealers. They hold their own very well.
Let's have a listen to what Trump had to say at the negotiating table when he was in Japan.
I know that you are increasing your military capacity very substantially, and we've received your orders for a very large amount of new military equipment, and you know that we make the best military equipment in the world, the jets, the missiles, and everything else, and hopefully we don't have to use them very much, if at all. But we appreciate that order, and we very much appreciate the trade. We're going to do tremendous trade together, I think more than ever before. We're just signing a new deal, and it's a very fair deal, and we look forward to welcoming Japan into the United States and a continuation, and it's something that everybody is very, very excited about.
I'm really excited about Japan and America working a lot closer together. Just Japan's, their military as a whole hasn't been that strong because it's mainly focused on the domestic forces and internally. Because after what happened with Pearl Harbor and the Second World War, Japan never actually built a war. But when they do build a military, you know how well they actually perform. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this one turns out.
Japanese are great manufacturers. Look at Toyota in Australia. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, the most reliable car that Australians love and fallen in love with and embraced for Australian conditions. And they tested them out here. So, they've got enormous capability as far as manufacturing is concerned.
So this is something I think the world probably isn't prepared for. I genuinely believe, I think Japan and America working together instead of against each other is going to be savage. I'm I'm excited about this one.
In a
I
good
feel like
way.
Big Kev. I'm excited. So yeah.
Let's have a look at the summary of what was negotiated here. I think it really is telling when you have that summation. We've got the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, kind of taking the reins here on this one.
Proud to announce that this evening we're going to be signing $490 billion of investment. So I'm sorry I left you down. I didn't get to 500 billion. I came a little short, but we'll get there. Anyway, so these deals are driven by the Japanese Strategic Investment Initiative, which was created by your tariff policy and by your historic trade agreement with Japan. So that was the underlying reason that we were able to get all these deals done today. So the commitments ensure the economic and national security of the United States of America. We're going to be developing energy. We're going to be developing nuclear, semiconductors, and strengthening the entire domestic supply chain.
Nuclear, it comes on the table there in terms of energy production and being very careful, the West, in terms of who it allows to produce nuclear and who doesn't. So there is some trust there in relation to that relationship.
Well, the thing is, like, Japan's been an open competitor with America in the past, especially like pre-Second World War. That's really turned around since pretty much they got decimated. But they have become, and Japan's, and you said it, you approached it earlier, just for the geopolitical side of things. So on the top part of Japan, there's actually 4 islands which are considered Japanese islands, which the Russians are trying to claim as their own. And then on the south side of Japan, again, another 4 islands, which China's trying to claim as their own. So there's actually been open conflict between both of these countries, between Japan and Russia and China. So I think Japan being off the coast of China is actually considered the first fence or the first line of defense actually against China if they do want to invade into the ocean and expand their borders to the east. And then you get out, there's certain different barriers, but I think Japan is going to be an absolute crucial ally for America, and through America, I think Australia. Australia's in an interesting spot with this one because even though we've got the AUKUS deal and we're actually allies with America, we're also so heavily tied to China, and a lot of our politicians have actually been purchased out or brought out by the Chinese. So it's going to be really interesting if China and America do come to blows. Where will Australia land? So I hope we side with America, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of people that try to side with China.
Well, here's the thing. Has America done deals with China? Absolutely. And we'll find out more about that in a moment, because that was the last stop that he did before returning to the US. But that's the thing. I mean, there is people kind of think of them in silos in terms of tensions, bombs and bullets and that sort of stuff. Whereas Trump thinks of it in terms of trade. That's his war, and that's how he negotiates. Thank God, because otherwise we'd have a lot of bloodshed, right? And that's the way traditional nations have gone down that path. Whereas this is a lot smarter way to do it. And, if you want to sell to our marketplace, well, this is the tariff we're putting on, unless you can negotiate and come up better with something better. And I think that is an understanding of how economics works. If you cut off somebody's cash flow, that's going to hurt them more, right, in the medium to long term, as opposed to, let's bomb the heck out of each other. And so it's a smart way to play as far as geopolitics.
Yep, the other one as well. The more America trades with different people, the further ahead they get of China. So you have a look at how much additional money they've put into the US military. All their allies, how much have they increased their military spending? That was one of the conditions of the tariffs. So what I'm saying here is America's biggest competitor through trade, not through conflict, but through trade, is becoming more and more isolated. And it is getting to the point where a lot of their trade initiatives, like look at the Belt and Road through the top of Pakistan, India going down, have a look how much at risk that was put recently with that conflict between Pakistan and India. So all the structures and all the infrastructure, and I'm talking international trade here, not like roads and power lines, all the international infrastructure that they put between different trade deals, you actually see how fragile a lot of this is. Like, yeah, they're building massive ports in Fiji and Papua New Guinea and all that sort of stuff, but if no ships are going through there, it's all wasted money. So they have to have the ships moving. They have to have the trade deals going between India and all these other countries. And if you look at, I think America produces 30% of their total trade. If America just turns around and goes, no, we're not trading with you, what economy can survive a 30% downturn immediately? I can't think of any. There's just, where do you go for that sort of volume? You can't. So
it's also been a smart play as far as the BRICS nations are concerned. We saw this conglomeration of about 45% of the world's population, and now we've got the partner nations that tips it over to 52% or so that are represented in this agreements. And of course, the United States is not included in that at all. It's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa primarily, and then all the other groups that wanted to jump on board. By visiting these smaller nations, this is saying a lot that the United States is open to doing deals no matter what size you are. And I think that's really critical. It's sounding a very important message to the rest of the world saying, hey, America is open for business. Come and talk.
Yep. The other thing is, don't forget, a lot of these smaller countries, because they are developing and emerging economies, tourism and mining are the main infrastructures, like their main sources of income. So a lot of these countries, like the Congos, you can't really say India's an emerging economy. Like they're actually a very large economy, but they've got a lot of mining coming out of India and Pakistan as well. So rare earths, I think America, from the report I heard, 52 different minerals were considered crucial for their military and their development. And this is where Australia's in a really, really good position, especially companies like Alcoa. Yes, it's an American company, but they do have bases in Australia, especially like Kwinana and what was the other one? Injera, I think it is, just out of Mandurah. So they're a very large company. The gallium is a byproduct of the aluminum manufacturing process. So it's one of those things where Australia is actually in a really, really good position here to not only sell what we've already got at a good price, but we can also reap benefits from byproducts of the manufacturing of those things. And aluminium refinery in Australia is one of the last things that we actually do produce. So this is a great boon for Australia.
Let's have a look at his trip to South Korea now, and you'll see him getting off the plane here. I love the formality of some of these countries that if you live leave the audio on this. It'll be it's quite amusing as to what song they played as he came down the red carpet.
Oh, YMCA.
What's interesting in this deal is it was a $350 billion trade deal, and that happened on Wednesday. And again, this announcement, it helps Korea with the US tariffs. They were dealing with some of the biggest ones there in the new investments into the American economy in exchange for reduced tariff rates. Under the finalized terms, Seoul is going to contribute $200 billion in cash through annual installments capped at $20 billion. Well, the remaining $150 billion will go towards shipbuilding projects aimed at revitalizing US manufacturing. Both sides have agreed to divide profits evenly until the initial investments are recouped and pursue only commercially viable projects. So I love this because this is nations doing business together. They're going, okay, if we're going to put this much of funding into this, you want your original capital out. And that's how most businessmen operate, right? When do we get our capital back? Once we've hit that, it's profit and gravy from there, baby. And that's how deals are done. And again, it shows the business mindset of Trump in these deals and how to get the business done, which is exciting for that nation, South Korea.
One thing I found interesting with the South Korea investment, I think it was 2 million. Hang on, just let me double check. I've got the figures here. I think it was 200 million of their 350 million was actually in a cash investment. Like, it was a really, really large amount.
That's how important these tariffs are to these nations. That says a lot, right?
Cash investment, and then 150 billion is in shipbuilding and cooperation. So, especially for the US military, having South Korea is arguably one of the best shipbuilders in the world. And having them to build the US military boats is a huge boon for America and South Korea as well.
Well, is it just military, or are they also looking at commercial? I don't know.
They build everything. Like their shipbuilding industry. And a lot of people say, oh, you go to Korea because there's lower incomes. Well, actually, no, believe it or not, the South Korean basic income is actually very similar to Australians when you look at it dollar for dollar and exchange rates and all that sort of stuff. So South Korea, they're amazing manufacturers. They build massive things like ships, boats, trains, all sorts of things like that. But they're able to do it with the same. You know how everyone goes, oh, we got to send things to Southeast Asia to build things because it's cheaper, the labor is cheaper and all that. No, that's crap. So South Korea can build all these things. They have the expertise and they can pay their workers roughly the same as what they pay in Australia. So why can't we do that in Australia? Sorry about getting political on you. That's just a massive failure from our politicians. And our industrial laws are just way overboard. It's just stifling business.
It's a fair question. From there, Trump went over to to China. Let's have a look. This has been the big one. This has been the bone of contention. This has been the country that's been hit the hardest with threats of 100% tariffs going in. And of course, this is telling what's been going on. If we look at the whole deal there, meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, they looked at trade, agriculture, energy, national security following the high-stakes meeting in South Korea. They included tariff cuts, which the Chinese were happy about, renewing the Chinese purchase of US goods, and expanding that cooperation. And it's quite telling what Trump has posted here. I had a truly great meeting with the presidency of China. Enormous respect between our two countries, and that will only be enacted what just took place. Trump, I think, is repairing a relationship here and needs to be seen to, let's not allowing them to not lose face has been very, very important in this space. And he goes, we agreed on many things with others, even of high importance, being very close to resolve. I was extremely honored by the fact that presidency authorized China to begin the purchase of massive amounts of soybeans, sorghum, and other farm products. Our farmers will be happy. In fact, as I said once during my first administration, farmers should immediately go out and buy more land and larger tractors. I would like to thank President Xi for this. Additionally, China has agreed to continue the flow of rare earths, critical minerals, magnets, etc., openly and freely. Now, that was the big one, very significantly. And the rest of the world will benefit from that negotiation, okay? That's what you've got to realize here. Additionally, China has agreed to continue the flow of rare earth, critical minerals, magnets. Very significantly, China has strongly stated they will work diligently with us to stop the flow of fentanyl into our country. They'll help us end the fentanyl crisis. China has also agreed that they'll begin the process of purchasing American energy. In fact, a very large-scale transaction may take place with the purchase of oil and gas from the great state of Alaska. Chris Wright, Doug Birngham, and our respective energy teams will be meeting to see if such an energy deal can be worked out. Agreements reached today will deliver prosperity, security to millions of Americans after this historic trip to Asia. I'm now heading back to Washington, D.C. I want to thank, here we go, great countries of Malaysia, Japan, South Korea for being so generous, gracious, and hospitable. Also, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, who were at the dinner last night, hosted by His Excellency Li Zhang-myong. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being brought into our country because of them. Our nation is strong, respected, admired. Again, the best is yet to come. So this has not just been a meeting with China. This has been an international meeting as well with the partner nations that are doing deals with China. Watch
Who
that
wasn't
space.
invited to the dinner? Do you know who wasn't invited to that dinner?
Who's that?
Kevin Rudd. I don't know if he rocked up or not, but
I think you'd probably have the diplomat to China there in Australia, from Australia. But regardless, it shows the scope of what happens here, how China is helping so many nations with manufacturing, and how many nations are affected between the relationship between China and the United States and dependent on that. If it goes peacefully, they all benefit, they all win. Will China come back with some other stuff after this in some time? We'll see. We'll see. That's been the playbook from for a while. It'll be interesting how that plays out.
So one thing I'd love to actually see the international different countries come to. One of the big reasons why so many American tech companies won't actually trade in China is because of the amount of intellectual theft. I'm a little bit disappointed that hasn't been addressed in any of these meetings with Trump. I'm trying to remember the bald dude from the Shark Tank. He's one of the big investors into new companies. It'll come to me later anyway. He was saying one of the reasons he absolutely has zero to do with China whatsoever is because every time you can spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on researching, developing of a product, the moment it hits the Chinese market, they'll steal it. The condition of entering into the Chinese market is you have to give them your intellectual property. And something like 80% of all international complaints against the copyright theft and all that sort of stuff, all of it comes from China and just gets bogged down in legalities, stuff like that. So a lot of people just say, no, we're not dealing with China. So that's something I would have liked to have seen to get addressed. But other than that, Trump's doing Trump things. He's doing as much as he can for the American people, and the rest of the world will prosper from this one. I think the time for everyone to stop, everyone has to stop hating what Trump's doing and actually understand it, because he's going to be around for another 3 years. I think they're going to absolutely decimate the midterms. I think the Democrats aren't going to have a leg to stand on, I don't think. And I think he's just going to keep getting stronger and stronger, and they have to either follow suit or get left behind, and the people that don't get left behind are going to suffer greatly, especially if they're from the Democrats. If they want to keep getting handouts for nothing and stuff like that, that's not going to fly.
Well, I've always said, don't listen to what Trump says, watch what he does. And right now, he's stopped a lot of wars going ahead, trying to end conflicts that no other presidents could do, or world leaders for that matter. And so he's certainly the guy for this time. But yeah, there's been so much propaganda since 2016 about Trump. Even before that, in the election build-up before 2014, 2015, that people have heard that for the past 10 years and has jaded their view. Judge a man not by what he says, but what he does. And I think that's really what we've got to look at with this guy.
Okay, you want to jump to the next slide?
Yes,
looks
please.
like it's a
So
bit
let's
of
have a look at this.
meme.
This is what he's put out here. You've noticed that he's re-put that on Truth Social of himself. That someone else has said, great again, embrace tariffs, abolish income tax as a businessman. Now, and this is Women for Trump. Now, when do you see this? When do you ever see a politician promoting abolishing income taxes in their nation? I mean, if you saw this in Australia, it was like, hello, you'd wonder what nation you actually were in and what time space you're in. But this is the heart of the guy in terms of getting Americans wealthy again, get rid of income tax. He's saying we were more prosperous when we didn't have them. And I think this is the harder, when you start to understand the two systems of finance, there's the Babylonian system and, of course, the preferred economy. We never had taxes under the preferred economy. We never had interest charged on loans in the preferred economy. And we've got to really look at what is so broken about this current Babylonian system. And why do I call it Babylonian? Because that's where it was formed back in ancient times. This is a reality of the new economy that can really prosper other people. And I think when you understand the contrast between the two, it plays out big time. I mean, imagine how far ahead you'd be if you hadn't been paying income taxes for the past 10, 15 years. When does a politician do this?
So something to take note on this picture, the so-called businessman is actually Donald Trump when he was still building Trump Towers and all that sort of stuff. What was that, late 80s, early 90s? This isn't a new thing that he's been saying just to win votes. He's been saying this since the early 80s, saying, like, we have to abolish the income tax, or at least make it smaller, and start embracing tariffs again, because it works. It clearly works. So imagine, like, at the moment, what's the latest one? Anyone who earns less than $200,000 US a year doesn't have to pay tax, like income tax.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine what that would do to the everyday American? Like, I just food, cars, clothing, getting your kids to universities. I've had this bad rash and I need to get plastic surgery on it. So let's go fix that up. Like, just the level and the quality of life will improve astronomically across the board. And then you also have a look at all the small, like, self-employed contractors out there, like electricians, plumbers, and all that sort of stuff. How much easier is it going to be for these guys if they don't have to worry about income tax? And on top of that, because you're not paying income tax and you're not getting the tax credits because you're not paying tax, you don't need them. How much easier is the accounting going to be? So instead of having two jobs, one actual with the business and B, doing the paperwork for the business, you've just got one job. You can just focus on doing what makes you money. Like, it's just every aspect of this is a win.
Yeah, it's not saying it's get rid of other taxes like capital gains tax and stamp duty, all that sort of stuff, but it is talking income tax. And I mean, that's huge. Consider how many businesses have to think about that, all right, when they do things like payroll. How much tax planning they have to do in terms of income tax, because obviously the business owner is like, look, I'm doing this for a reason. How can I minimize my tax? You eliminate that problem, businesses can then focus on what they're great at, and that's making wealth and providing jobs for people, and of course putting food on people's tables. That's what business owners do, supporting families, and that's critical. But there's one thing, and I'm going to reveal it now, was one thing that could undermine this whole thing, which leads from the last slide, and that's this statement right here that Trump has put out. It's really critical this goes ahead, and it's basically, let's have a read of it. Next week's case on tariffs is one of the most important in the history of the country. If a president is not allowed to use tariffs, there's a legal challenge against this. We'll be at a major disadvantage against all other countries throughout the world, especially the majors. In a true sense, we would be defenseless. Tariffs have brought us great wealth and national security in the 9 months that I've had the honor to serve as president. The stock market has hit all-time highs many times during my short time in office, with virtually no inflation and national security that is second to none. Our recent successful negotiation with China and many others put us in a strong position only because we had tariffs with which to negotiate fair and sustainable deals. If a president was not able to quickly and nimbly use the power of tariffs, we'd be defenseless, leading perhaps even to the ruination of our nation. The only people fighting us are foreign countries who for years have taken advantage of us, those who hate our country, and the Democrats, because our numbers are insurmountably good. I will not be going to the court on Wednesday, in that I do not want to distract from the importance of this decision. It will be, in my opinion, one of the most important and consequential decisions ever made by the United States Supreme Court. If we win, we will be the richest, most secure country anywhere in the world by far. If we lose, our country will be reduced to almost third world status. And he's basically saying, pray that this goes well, this court case. This is the one thing that undermines it, that somebody has put in there and put it before the courts. Well, is it legal for us to do this? If somebody does that and the nation's prospering, you've got to wonder what side they're actually on.
Yeah. I said this earlier, I think people just got to get off whatever drugs they're on and just start focusing, like, is America doing well? And just stop fighting him for the sakes of fighting him. Fight him on things that actually matter. like, and do it the proper way. Like shutting down the government just because you want to add healthcare for illegals. They've had the power. How long? So Obama was in power for 8 years. Biden had it for another 4 years. Why haven't you put that into law? That's what I want to know.
It's
And
been
I
their
just find
playbook
it,
for ages.
it just dumbfounds me. So there's a clear cut, concise way to do things, and they're trying to shortcut it when it's against what they want. And it's just, we were covering it, and you'll see it on Friday on Freedom Fridays with Dan. We recorded earlier today. The Democrats are just some of the biggest hypocrites I've ever seen. And that's even talking about the Australian Labor government. Like, the Australian Labor government is just insane when it comes to hypocrisy. But, like, just stop. Just stop. Go support America as a whole, and fight the things that are important to you. Don't fight him for the sake of fighting. That just does my head in. So, anyway.
I think there's been many claims that there was a plot to destroy America from within. You cannot take America from the outside. You have to get inside to destroy it. And there's a lot of suspicion about what has actually been going on for how many years now in cleaning out, as Trump would say, draining the swamp. And it puts into question a lot of other people who then look at their own nations and go, well, do we have these kind of problems in our nation as well? Have our public servants stopped serving the public and been bought out by others with other nefarious agendas? That question, really, each nation has to ask that and have a good examination of themselves and go, well, where do we go from here as a nation?